So today, just for fun, we're going to have a look at a bit of negative feedback from my channel. You know, by and large I don't get hate mail. I mean, it's a small channel, but in its own little niche it's somewhat well received. Okay, so let's get into this. I'm going to look at three different things, two from the past week. Well, let's start off with the sort of free bonus one that requires almost no attention, because this guy is just, you know, I feel sorry for this guy. He's got the total wrong end of the stick, and he's just dived in there without thinking. This is from my Cytec ProFlight Cessna yoke review. Now, if you watched that review, one of the main things I did in that video was I was curious to know why the ProFlight Cessna yoke and the ProFlight yoke behaved differently in terms of the interference between the elevator and the aileron action. So I was trying to figure that out. Now, this guy's commented, and he seems to be totally oblivious to the fact that that's what I was trying to do. So here we go.
What a load of you talk. You spend ages of boring diatribe to try to deduce if elevator effect affect aileron, etc., or vice versa. Total dumb. It is so easy. Simply open the joystick interface in FS or UIPC, FS UIPC, and look, exclamation mark, at the movement of crosshairs as you move the yoke. If there is unwanted yoke from one axis to another in a linear pull or rotate, it will be clearly visible. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Why the do you spend all this time on showing your flying skills?
Actually, I thought my flying skills in that video were pretty damn good. You know, I think he's selling me short there. Better than his punctuation skills. Blah blah blah.
Total moron.
He says to me. So there you go, that's that one. Not very serious affair. Let's move on to the meat. Okay, so these two coming up are both from the video about where I showed the calibration mode for the honeycomb aeronautical yoke. So this guy starts off, I may give this calibration method a try. I'm not sure why he's using quotes around calibration. A try just to see what happens. But I'll have to be honest with you. Now, but, you know, what's that word doing then? But is a conjunction which is, you know, it takes two things which are presumably or presumed to be contradictory and contrasts them. Now, he's contrasting this with something that's entirely unrelated. I'll have to be honest with you, the honeycomb yoke is so much better than the Cytec yoke that everyone compares it to. Well, okay, everyone compares it to, I'll give you that. That's rhetoric. You know, you can't say everyone compares it to the Cytec yoke, but many people do, so we'll give you that. So what? You know, what's that got to do with the calibration method on the honeycomb yoke? I don't get it. So the honeycomb yoke is so much better than the Cytec yoke that everyone compares it to. I do not, moving on, I do not notice any appreciable dead zone in X-Plane 11. Again, so what? What's that got to do with the price of fish? You know, non sequitur is the name of the game here, and this guy's just full of that. He makes lots of points that have got no connection at all to anything I said in this video or in any of my other videos, and which are directly contradicted by many things I've said in those videos. So he doesn't notice any appreciable dead zones in X-Plane 11. Great, so his yoke is calibrated from the factory better than some of the other yokes out there, certainly better than my yoke was. Irrelevant. I barely touched the yoke. He's just saying the same thing again now. Barely touched the yoke, and I can see movement of the controls in the sim. Great. So we get the message. Your yoke is calibrated reasonably well. So-called experts, quotes again, spout off about dead zones. I don't know where he's getting experts from. You know, nobody's mentioned experts. Experts. He's implying. I mean, this is innuendo. He's implying that people are holding themselves up as experts, which I'm not doing. I've never done. You know, I think the word expert is way overused. It's very often misused, and so I never use it. This is a narrative that the guy's built for himself, and he's fighting against that narrative, really, at the end of the day. So-called experts spout off about dead zones. Now, dead zones, experts in quotes, great. Don't put dead zones in quotes. There are dead zones. Many people experience dead zones in their yoke. We'll say more about this as we go. Oh my God. And everyone is now all concerned about it. Well, I agree with that. You know, there is a lot of hysteria being promulgated about the dead zones, and you know, the irony is I've specifically said that in the video that this guy's complaining about. And I've said that that's one of the things I'm trying to dismantle by taking away this sort of mystique around what the dead zones are, whether they exist, and how to fix the damn things. You know, God, watch the ball. You know, this video is entirely about explaining the dead zones and showing you how to fix them, and telling you why they're not a problem. So, moving on, and everyone is now all concerned about it. Meanwhile, another non sequitur coming up here. Meanwhile, most of us have been waiting patiently on a good replacement for the Cytec yoke, which the honeycomb absolutely is. So, I don't know why that sentence has inserted itself there. I mean, I agree with it. A lot of people have been eagerly anticipating this yoke. A, no disagreement there. B, this honeycomb absolutely is a good replacement for the Cytec yoke. Yep, I agree with that, as I've said repeatedly. If you watch my review video for this yoke, I think I recall myself saying it was going to wipe the floor with the competition. So there you go. So I don't know what he's arguing against. He's arguing against, you know, phantoms here. If you don't think it's the best yoke at the price point, well, I do think it's the best yoke at the price point, actually. I think I've said that as well. Did I not say this was going to wipe the floor with the competition if Honeycomb was able to maintain production at this price point? I think I did say that. But, hypothetical, if you don't think this is the best yoke at the price point, then go spend $1,000 plus on the Yoko or other high-end controls. Can't really see the logic of that. If I didn't think this was the best yoke at the price point, I would surely buy the best yoke at the price point over this one. I wouldn't go and buy a high-end one. So again, I think that's Budweiser logic, we could call that. It would be nice if someone could come up with an accurate testing unit that could compare all these controllers without the human factor involved. Well, for God's sake, if you watched my previous video, Honeycomb Dead Zones Explained, I think it was called, something like that, I measured on camera, I attempted to measure to the best of the equipment I had available the dead zone, so an objective measurement we're talking about here. Okay, I wasn't a accurate testing unit in the sense of being a machine, but you know, to within the acuity of my own human vision, the number of frames per second my GoPro camera can capture, I did just that, and I drew some conclusions which have just sailed way over this guy's head, because he's not interested in the conclusions. He's interested in picking a bone with something he thinks I said, because he's not slowing down and thinking about it. By the way, I have watched, now it gets interesting, by the way, I have watched numerous videos of yours and have enjoyed them. Great, that seems like a compliment, but actually that's the setup for the next bit, which, well, he's not quite finished setting up yet. So this is not a witch hunt, he says. We'll come back to that in a second, because then he says, I just happen to think you've got this one totally wrong. Now he doesn't say what he thinks I've got totally wrong. Does he mean that there aren't any dead zones in anybody's yoke? Does he mean this calibration routine is fiction and doesn't exist? Does he mean that running the calibration and going through the things I've described in the video aren't a useful thing to do? I think what he probably means is, again, this phantom narrative, which seems to be that I think the Honeycomb yoke is crap and I want to dissuade people from buying it, which is, you know, you'd have to be a pretty inattentive viewer to reach that conclusion. But that's what he's arguing against. So he's arguing against himself, honestly. So coming back to the disingenuous, this is not a witch hunt, he then goes on to say it's not always about getting the most views, integrity counts. So he's directly accusing me of something there about, I'm not even sure what he's accusing me of, having a lack of integrity, I suppose. You know, he's implying or suggesting that I'm posting these things to get views for my channel, and that makes no sense at all to me. Why is that? You know, why is getting views? Does anybody create YouTube videos just to get views, what is that? You know, that has zero significance. Okay, it's nice to get to see that people are watching the videos. I mean, there's some small sense of satisfaction there, to see that people are engaging with things that you find interesting. But or I guess if you're one of these YouTube superstars and you make a living by, you know, monetizing your videos. I mean, I monetize my videos. I make, you know, $20 a month if I'm lucky on that. So getting views doesn't, you know, there's no doesn't make any sense to me. So well and truly lays cards on the table there. So we went around this cycle one more time because I, you know, responded and just said, well, sometimes I wonder if people even watch the videos before posting comments. And he responded petulantly, please enlighten me, I'll edit my comment if I'm wrong. And then I posted, well, I did think about responding to this actually in the video, sorry, on the comment section, but that never works out. You know, if you respond to these things head on, they just become arguments. And, you know, although this guy is saying, if I'm wrong, I'll edit my comment, you know, the part he's not saying is, I'm never in a million years going to get him to admit that he's wrong, because that's not how it works. So I went through a number of different ways to respond to this, and you know, kind of irritated me because of all the things I said earlier. This guy's, you know, he's not listening to what I'm saying. He's creating his own internal representation of what he thinks I'm saying and then shouting at me because he doesn't like that. So I basically said, no, I'm not going to refute that. You know, there's too much crap in there to refute. But just let's not lose sight of the fact that this video is intended to be helpful. You know, it gives useful information, and a lot of people have actually commented to say they've found it helpful. Okay, so he comes back with a fairly predictable playground response. Or perhaps you aren't able to refute my comments. Then he goes on, I just watched again, good, well if he did. And it's also abundantly, now another key word there, also, that to me immediately tells me he's not going to address the argument I laid out that this was actually a helpful video that I posted with good intentions that many people have found useful. He's totally ignored that, and he's moving on to something else, which is, it's also, so he says it's also abundantly clear that you, well, it's not abundantly clear. What he's saying is, I've also decided, or I've inferred from looking at your video again, that you don't think anyone can do a proper review except for you. Well, nowhere in my video have I said that. In fact, I've said the opposite. I've criticised a couple of specific reviews on specific grounds. I've pointed out that good reviews are actually fairly scarce on the World Wide Web. And I've specifically, I think, remember saying that, you know, none of the things that I was saying about those reviews was intended to denigrate the reviews per se, and that they all added useful information in their own right. But comparatively speaking, they didn't address the case in point, you know, the stuff about dead zones. But of course he's generalised that and, you know, made a grandiose statement, completely unwarranted, about something that I think, which is that I now consider that nobody other than me can make a good review. Now I happen to think that I'm fairly good at making reviews by the yardstick of what's out there. This is one of the things, you know, that I trade on, if you like. I'm interested in giving good information. I try to be conscientious in making a review. I try to say something, you know, beyond the superficial. Am I claiming to be the Jesus of reviewers? No. It's in this guy's head. And then he goes on to, this is my favourite part actually. You also make excuses for essentially throwing a honeycomb representative under the bus. I'll come back to that bit, because the next bit is, he's quoting me, I was given the information before I was asked not to reveal it, so I have no commitment to honeycomb aeronautical. Those were your words verbatim. Well, they weren't my words verbatim actually, so the guy can't even quote me accurately. You were asked not to make the information public. Whether it was before, during or after makes zero difference. Well, clearly we disagree on that. Why does it make no difference? You know, we had no contract. If he said, I will tell you this information on the condition that you don't share it, and I agree to that, you know, there's a contract being made there. There's an agreement. There's a negotiation. That's a different situation to something he just throws out there and then says, oh, by the way, don't tell anyone. I'm not going to just talk anymore about that. I mean, that's obvious. Anyway, none of this is that important. The guy goes on, but the interesting part for me is he goes on to say, well, he talks about throwing the guy under the bus. The person could potentially lose their job, yet you feel okay about sharing the info for sake of views on your channel. Well, there he goes on again about views, so that's completely spurious. The interesting part about this, well, right before he says you should be ashamed of yourself, very judgmental there, says who, who's to say I should be ashamed of myself? Should is a very interesting word. That's called, is that called a deontic operator? Something about deontic logic, the logic of morality. Should, ought, must, may. Where does that come from? That's a very interesting topic to research on the internet for yourselves. Where has this idea come from that the global marketing manager of Honeycomb Aeronautical shared that information with me illicitly, which is the implication here, thereby creating a precarious situation where his job was on the line? This is a complete fiction that this commentator has imagined, and in fact, the information was shared with me in a PDF file that is clearly written for the consumer. It's the same style and presentation as the Honeycomb Aeronautical yoke user manual, in that it's got coloured photographs in and nicely formatted text and so on. Clearly this is a document that at some point was intended for end users. I've also had at least one report of this information being given by technical support to another purchaser of the yoke, not by this same Honeycomb representative. I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but it was from some other technical support source. And then by implication, in this video I talk about a Facebook post by Honeycomb Aeronautical that more or less states if you phone up technical support, they will talk you through sorting out the dead zones, and the only way plausibly they can do that is by sharing this information. So this guy's gone off like a rocket on a total misapprehension that this has been shared illicitly and therefore this guy's job is at stake. Calm yourself down, listen to what's being said, take a breath. So there you go, we went round the loop twice on that. My closing comment was just go back and watch the videos and bloody pay attention to what you're hearing. So, Exhibit A. Let's move on to Exhibit B, because this was going to be the main course, and then, this guy was trumped by something that came up this week. The starting point was, again, I'm going to hide the identities of these people. You can figure out who these people are. If you go back and look at the video and the comments, you'll find out who they are, unless they've chosen to remove their comments, of course. This guy popped up yesterday or the day before. Initially on my previous video, The Dead Zones Explained, it was a complimentary comment. But then he comes back and, I logged into my YouTube account and there's flipping 8 comments in a row or something like that from this guy. So he starts off with, hey man, he man, I'm not sure what that is, that a laugh, a giggle, he man, hey man, I totally get you, no you don't, but calm down a little, eh? Maybe he's Canadian. This is a fantastic yoke for the price. Yeah, no quibble there, I don't think I said anything to the contrary. This is commenting on the same video, by the way. I'm sure the units have tiny imperfections, but you would be defensive too. I, quotes here, I just created this great yoke for a great price and these guys are treating this like a criminal investigation about Dead Zone. So that's his parody of Honeycomb Aeronautical responding to this in a defensive manner. Okay, I mean there's some merit in what he's saying there, but I mean that's kind of one of the points I'm trying to make. And I've said repeatedly, I have minimised, from the outset when I did my review, I pointed out that people had noticed dead zones and I said I don't think it's a problem. And I said I'm not even sure that you can detect them in your day-to-day flying of the yoke. But he's got a point there. This risks becoming an exaggerated issue that eclipses the fact that this is actually a really good product. But I have said that myself, and that is partly the point of releasing that video in the first place. He goes on, no one has to buy the yoke if they don't like it. Non sequitur. What's that got to do with anything? Nothing. And actually, you know, the flip side of that is people are actually being put off buying this yoke because of the obfuscation around the issue of dead zones. And I'm sure it's easy to return. Well, don't get me started on the serial returners, you know, the people who buy products such as this and then abuse the vendor's goodwill in accepting returns and treat that as if it was a try before you buy arrangement. And why would I want to return it? You know, I mean, he says more about this in a while. Another flipping, you know. I found your first video on this subject factual, fair and quite good-natured. Thank you very much. This one, ellipsis, well, I think you've inserted yourself into this situation a bit like a diva or a soap opera star. Okay, hopefully he's going to explain that. Thanks for the info, but honestly you end up looking a little wacky. And Honeycomb's responses, brackets, which I don't think would directed at you, despite what you've built up in your mind. I don't think they were directed at me either. Not sure where he's got the idea that I thought otherwise. You know, that's why I think I said their Facebook post was, what did I say? I said it was disrespectful to, and then I said, well, obliquely it was disrespectful to me, you know, by virtue of the fact that they were criticising people who posted videos, and I posted a video. So, you know, let's keep track of whose narrative is whose here. So, he's saying, thanks for the info, blah blah blah. Honeycomb's responses as understandable. I'm not sure which responses he's talking about here. Maybe he means the spiteful Honeycomb Facebook post, so we disagree on that. You know, it's very unprofessional of a vendor such as Honeycomb to appear spiteful in any context. I don't know why there's any controversy about that. Listen, us flight sim geeks, now he's us, he's creating a club that he's presuming both he and I belong to. Well, you know, create your own club, mate. We are a weird bunch. I understand your emotions and drama about the matter. Well, clearly you don't, because you're going off. Well, we're going to see what. I think the funny thing about this is he's calling me wacky, and you know, this guy seems to have posted 6 or 7 or 8 comments in a row. And it's like he was posting these comments as he was watching the video, probably like drunk or something in the middle of the night. And each time he saw a new point to disagree with, he's posted another comment. But we are fact-based people. Well, I'd like to think so. Objectivity is what we're after. It seems to be sorely lacking here. And your conflation of all this into some pick battle, I think he means pitched battle, which this obviously isn't. This is the opposite of that. This is a ad hoc, you know, dynamic unfolding situation that involves Honeycomb and myself and other players. So where he's going with that, I don't know. Between you and some company is little unwarranted. I'm giving you the truth as I see it. Well, that's clear. Truth is a very fickle thing, I think we're discovering. Because I like and respect you as a personality on YouTube. Well, great. You know, if that was genuine, I take that as a compliment. Maybe he did at that point like and respect me as a personality on YouTube. You know, 10 minutes later, when he gets to the next comment down, that starts to go a bit south very rapidly. So he posted all these comments within the hour. You know, the timestamps are all the same, to the resolution of 1 hour. He goes on to say, LOL, lol. Now anybody who says LOL, you know, immediately goes down in my estimation as a thinking person. You're a guy who obviously has tens of thousands, capitalised, tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a flight sim setup. Not sure where he gets that from. I take that as a compliment. You know, that suggests my flight sim cockpit looks a lot more professional than perhaps you would think if you saw it close up. And you're wanting to burn Honeycomb down. Well, am I? Not sure where I said that part. Because a $250 yoke doesn't fit into your exacting specifications. Again, you know, this is a twisting of the truth, or it's not my truth. This is his truth. You know, first of all, a $250 yoke doesn't fit to your exacting specifications. These are not my specifications. These are Honeycomb specifications. You know, Honeycomb put that yoke out there they made some claims for it, including the fact that there are no dead zones. When challenged on that, they have repeated that claim. That's not my specification, that's Honeycomb's specification. What else to say about that? The fact, he suggests I'm wanting to burn Honeycomb down. Watch the damn video, listen to what I'm saying. Honeycomb could dismantle all of this controversy by being a little bit open about the fact of and the nature of the dead zones and the reason they exist. I've said that in the video. The problem would go away and it would be to Honeycomb's benefit. Now if that looks like burning Honeycomb down, well, what can I say? There are lies, he goes on, damnable lies. I think he's trying to quote Benjamin Disraeli there and failing miserably. And if Honeycomb lied about the detente or the dead zone, it is not a damnable lie and quite worth the money. I don't know what, I think he is drunk when he posts that, because that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not sure what a damnable lie is supposed to be. He seems to be saying, the logic of this, check me on this, seems to be, if Honeycomb lied, now I never used the word lied, I did say that the information they put out is dubious in my experience, but he's saying if Honeycomb lied, it's excusable because it's not a damnable lie, whatever that means. It's an innocuous lie, perhaps, is what he's saying, and quite worth the money. I mean, what he's saying grammatically is that the lie is worth the money, but I suppose what he means is the lie is excusable because, in any case, the yoke's worth the money. Well, okay, you can make a case for that. I wouldn't make that case. I happen to think that lying is an intrinsically bad thing, all other things being equal. Then he goes on. This is where it really starts to take a bit of a downturn, a kind of distasteful turn. You're a funny guy. Return the yoke and shut up, you self-important diva. Why would I want to return the yoke? I don't know how many times I have to say, I like this yoke, this is a good yoke, buy this yoke, there's nothing wrong with this yoke. The yoke has dead zones, but they have a purpose. You can fix them, don't return your yoke. I just don't get this return the yoke. The guy doesn't get what's going on here. I mean, coming back to the point, he's building another narrative of his own, and he's railing against that narrative. Here's another thing. I bought this. I didn't buy this yoke because I needed a yoke. I bought this yoke because I was interested to know if Honeycomb could deliver what they had promised they could deliver, whether they could deliver it at the price point they said, whether it lived up to the advanced publicity, and pretty much all of those things are answered in the affirmative. The price point is slightly higher than it originally was pitched at, but that's okay as long as they can maintain it. I bought this yoke because I was interested in it from an engineering standpoint, and I wanted to review it for my YouTube channel. I've reviewed a lot of flight yokes in the past. I was very interested to compare this. I don't need a yoke, I've got a Yoko, for God's sake. Moving on. By appearances you look like a man who is mature and successful enough to realise the difference between marketing material and real life, expectations versus reality, and not to be influenced by modern outrage culture on the internet. Okay, I'm not sure what's happening there. Well, he seems to be saying two different things there. One thing is, I think he's apologising, or he's making excuses for Honeycomb once again being dishonest in their marketing. I think that's the only sense I can make of that, by saying don't trust marketing material, everybody lies to sell stuff. Not a great vote of confidence for Honeycomb Aeronautical from this guy there. I'm not sure what this thing about outrage culture on the internet is. I don't think I'm even going to have a go at that because it's just gobbledygook. You sound like a 17-year-old making videos about, capital letters, someone lied, people died. I don't, again, maybe that's a media reference or a allusion to some popular culture artifact that I'm unaware of. Maybe there's a heavy metal song called "This Guy Looks Like He Could Be a Heavy Metal Dude." Someone lied, people died. Is that a thing? Is that an epithet I'm supposed to have heard? Come off it, mate. Okay, whatever. Moving on. He's relentless, this guy. We still only halfway down his list of midnight posts. Watched several videos of yours, enjoyed your views and laid back demeanour. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's why one of the things people like about my channel, my videos. But this video turned me off. Well, okay, fair enough, you know, not everybody's going to like every video. I've got 310 other public videos out there. Some people like some of them and not others. Glad I never subscribed. I don't get that part. I mean, so what if you'd subscribed? Unsubscribe. You know, it's not like you, what is it, you might have accidentally watched some more videos you didn't like on my channel. I guess you have to keep in mind the question of sanity. I think we're going innuendo bound here. When someone with a $10,000 plus flight simulator setup, he keeps coming back to this. I don't know where he gets this $10,000 plus from. Let's just address that. I mean, you know, if you look back at my videos, you can look at the Twin Otter cockpit build part 23, I think it is. That's where I go through in detail how much I spent on that. And you know, he's overestimated by 800%, I think, roughly speaking. In other words, he's talking nonsense. It's rhetoric. It's rhetoric, that's all it is. For completing that long sentence, you have to keep in mind the question of sanity when someone with a $10,000 plus flight simulator setup and is raging against the machine about a $250 yoke. Raging against the machine, which would be Honeycomb Aeronautical, I suppose, about a $250 yoke. I think we've covered this. You know, I'm not raging against anything. I'm you know, interested in pursuing the enigma or the mystery, well, deformer mystery around, I think I've solved the mystery to my own satisfaction, around the dead zones. You know, nothing more. So raging against the machine. It's a delay. Oh, okay, now he's moving on to something I said about SciTech's technical support strategy. Quotes. He's quoting me, or he's probably not quoting me correctly, but it's a delay tactic and you get sick of taking them back. Haha, yeah, it's obvious you have returned lots of merchandise in your life. Here we go again, rhetoric, you know, it's obvious you have returned stuff. Is it? You know, where's the evidence for it? No evidence for that at all. That's entirely fabricated or inferred, let's say, on the, well, presumably on the basis that I dared to mention that people returned their faulty devices to SciTech. Or, you know, he's neglected the part where I was suggesting they returned them because they were invited to return them by SciTech as their #1 technical support intervention. Let's just address this thing. So it's obvious I have returned lots of merchandise in my life. Well, actually, I rarely return anything. I can't remember the last time I returned anything. You know, completely incorrect to infer that I'm a serial returner of any sort. So, again, this is made up. You know, this guy's constructing narratives of his own. Don't know what Michael White and David Epstein would make of this, but you know, this is entirely of his own construction. Where are we? Do you measure everything by the millimetre and return it if it's a couple off? Well, I think we've established that I don't return things at all, by and large, but you know, that's just a stupid thing to say. I mean, like what? It depends what it is. If I bought a bottom bracket for my mountain bike and it was a couple of millimetres off, yes, I'd return it, because it would be completely useless for purpose. I mean, what's he talking about? Depends what it is. So no, I think the answer to that is more nonsense. Phew, we're getting there. Honestly, the worst thing they did is give you this secret capital letters, secret calibration mode. They thought they were dealing with a mature adult. I think we're getting really into playground stuff here now. Once you had this knowledge in your possession, you got it in your head, brackets, not unlike a teenage girl who has received a signed photograph from their favourite pop star. Sounds like the voice of experience there. That you were on the team and part of their QA process. Did I? I'm not sure where you're inferring that from. After they failed to suck your asshole adequately. Is that even a thing? I mean, that doesn't sound very nice, actually. Yeah, here's the thing. I looked this guy's YouTube channel up, and he's got a video on there where he talks about running a Christian Discord server. And interestingly enough, he says in that video, there's only one rule, and the rule is to act as if you're in Sunday school. Might be nice if he practiced what he preached, you might think. I mean, maybe that's what happens in Sunday school. I don't know. I'm a little bit naive. Anyway, after they failed to suck my arsehole adequately, you're in war mode. So I'm in war mode apparently. Again, I think that's, you know, at best, charitably, that's gross hyperbole on his part. The reality is I've been slightly annoyed at Honeycomb Aeronautical, and I've chosen to take a slightly oppositional stance with regard to the calibration mode. Not sure that counts as war mode. Last thing he says, also see that this was an hour, this timestamp for this is an hour later, so maybe he went away, had time to reflect and thought what else could he say, and he came back with, also see the preview image of this video has bullet holes and blood, real cute. What the heck is that about? I have no idea, no clue what he's objecting to there. Yes, the preview image, the thumbnail, has bullet holes and blood. It's a trope, you know. It's a death's head, skull and crossbones, on a road sign with bullet holes in it. I mean, you know, I've killed the dead zones. You know, the death's head road sign is the dead zones. If you look at the previous video, it's an allusion to the thumbnail for the previous video about the dead zones. I mean, what do you know? Do you need it spelled out? Clearly, you do need it spelled out. So there you go. That is Mr. Anonymous. We'll keep him. You know, at the time of making this, that's as far as any of these conversations have gone. Maybe these two guys will keep the ball rolling, but you know, maybe they've sobered up by now and feel a little bit sheepish. So hopefully you were entertained by that. I quite enjoyed doing that actually. Maybe I'll get some more hate mail, and presently we'll do another one of these.